It's now time to take a look at stories making headlines on Nigerian newspapers, and I have joining me here in the studio is a journalist, Odufowokan. Thank you so much for being here this morning.
It's a pleasure.
Right. So we've got a lecturer from the University of Lagos, Ekere. It's good to see you.
Thank you. So it was a pleasure to be here.
Let's delve into the newspaper headlines. First news is next. First. Jonathan escapes death in auto crash. Former President Goodluck Jonathan escapes death in auto crash, loses 2 aides. Ex-president on bed rest. That's according to source. This Nigeria's next. Battle for Aso Rock. PDP, APC plot strategies for consensus primaries. United Front key to PDP victory in 2023, says Governor Wike. Leadership newspaper is next. Amid backlash over PDP open ticket, northern presidential aspirants lobby southern governors. That's the leadership newspaper. Vanguard newspaper is next. PDP's open ticket presidential contest triggers uproar. The writers read, "We didn't throw ticket open." That's according to Governor Otom. Why contest was thrown open? That's according to zoning committee. That's quite an interesting one there. The Punch newspaper is next. Zoning crisis threatens PDP. South insists on presidency. The writers read, party in dilemma over zoning, doesn't want to appear anti-South. Chieftain. Ex-Governor Fayose buys presidential form, rejects Saraki consensus proposal. That's it. The Nation newspaper is next. Zoning. Ohaneze lashes PDP as Fayose folds consensus. Ex-governor rates Atiku Tambuwal as paperweight. Obiozo, PDP violates own constitution on zoning. At the Nation newspaper there. The Guardian newspaper has the scribbling headline, South Middle Belt Indigbo leaders rage as PDP dumps zoning. Governor Otom denies, says it was quoted out of context. All right, that's the Guardian newspaper. This Day newspaper is next. This Day projects with northern presidential candidate, PDP set to lose key southern states. With northern presidential candidates, PDP set to lose key southern states. Presidential primaries, that's the next is Daily Independent. Presidential primaries, APC leaders warn President Buhari against consensus candidacy. No aspirants should be imposed on contestants. That's according to Sage. It's a Sage. Nigerian Tribune is next. 2023. INEC estimates 90 million voters. INEC estimates 90 million voters, 18 political parties to field candidates in 1,491 constituencies. About 1 million election officials to be used in 176,846 polling units. That's on page 2 of the Nigerian Blueprint is next, talking about health matters. COVID-19, 11 months after federal government lifts restrictions on curfew, large gatherings, urges compliance with existing health protocol. Experts advocate improved vaccination on infectious diseases. Daily Trust is next. 10 months after, 11 Yauri school girls still in captivity. Dogo Gide insists on 100 million naira ransom. Kingpin builds mansion, live large in forest. Families, 2 million naira collected, girl withheld. Mother bedridden over girl's fate. Wow, that's Daily Trust there. News Direct is next. Copyright abuse. Senate considers imprisonment, fine for Facebook, Twitter post violators. Senate considers imprisonment, fine for Facebook, Twitter post violators. The next is national economy. CBN goes undercover, fishes out erring banks on crypto transactions. Fined Stanbic IBTC 200 million naira. Others also fined. Business Day is last but not the least. Local operators explore options amid record oil theft. Local operators explore options amid record oil theft. Let's delve into the newspaper headlines, what they are reporting this morning. I think it will be okay if we start with Daily Trust human angle story here. 10 months after, 11 Yauri schoolgirls still in captivity. Dari, I'll start with you. Dogogide insists on 100 million naira ransom, and we've been talking about, we started from Chibok schoolgirls, we're talking about Yahori schoolgirls and some other issues, and looks like there are so many issues right in our hands to handle, too much for us to to chew.
Yeah, well, these are constant reminders of our state of insecurity. These are things we have come to live with, sadly. Because you discover the Yahori girls, 10 months since last year, were kidnapped. The kidnappers, or the kingpin of the kidnappers, hold up that these girls are with me, as Dogogide, placed a 100 million naira bounty on their head, and insisted that unless the amount is paid, he's not going to release them. It's the same Dogogide that security will tell us we know where they are, we know where he's hibernating, but we've been unable to effect the release of these girls. In this country, an American or Americans were kidnapped, and a special squad came, freed these hostages, and left with them. And in our own country, we are unable to free people who are unfortunate enough to fall into the hands of criminals. Government is unable to offer protection. Our security forces offer explanations all the time instead of protection to the people. And taxpayers' money are daily spent to equip these security forces. It's unfortunate that these people also have parents. It's unfortunate that they also have relatives who are daily missing them. Beyond just missing, it's a realization or a confirmation of the fact that security-wise in this country, we are nowhere to be found. And as a human being, when I wake up and people talk about attacks from one community to the other, and the way we even report these things now is as if is the usual. It is when we don't have attacks that we feel is unusual. We are gradually losing our humanity to the failure of government. We even you and I, our reactions to these criminalities are no longer as they used to be. When you pick a newspaper now, you see 40 killed. You just read and pass.
It's like
I want you to remember those times when this started, and you see 4 killed, and we will talk about it for the rest of the day. It is no longer even making headlines. So it is painful that criminals are being allowed to dictate how we live now. Criminals are dictating how we live, because this man is saying, you don't give me 100, only God knows what they are doing with those girls. 10 months away from home. It's young ladies.
It's only better imagined. Let me go to
it's unfortunate.
Dan Ekere. Dan, Kingpin builds mansion, live large in forest, and we saw a drone picture or videos of some of these bandits, some of them even trying to aim at the drone. Perplexed. So the question is, we know where these people are, according to what Governor El-Rufai said. Why don't we just bombard them and wipe them off the face of the earth?
Well, it is really very surprising that we have such challenges, and these people we call bandits, criminals, and the rest are humans who live among us. Interestingly, we know where they if they had not seen the so-called mansion, I'm not sure they will be describing it, because it's not an imaginary image they are trying to present.
And the mansion is not mobile.
So it is something that is static, and they said it's in the forest. So you'll be wondering, I keep wondering the kind of forest, because the way these forests are really very surprising. Is it a one-man forest, or has the forest become a community?
On our own sovereignty.
Yes. So if we have these places known, we have seen over time how Sheikh Gumi goes to these places, meet with them, evangelize them, and the rest of them. Now, through drones or with drones, we've been able to identify that this is the home, kind of. And interestingly, even these criminals have relatives. Sometimes, too, some of them benefit from the process of this crime, because chances are that they will be doing some remission, just like we do have, you know, kickbacks from our people all over the world, and these ones might equally be doing the same to their families. Right. Is it so difficult to actually track these people? And again, they make these calls to make the demands with telephone lines. Are we saying that the network providers don't have any way of tracking, you know, these calls? So it's really very shocking what is happening. I keep wondering why we will continue to be in this. Now, it's even more challenging that a lot of these things are happening in a state like Kaduna. You know, a lot of security challenges are happening in a state like Kaduna, where you have all the security apparatuses, you know, that we rely on in this country. Is there any form of, is any game going on? It's really shocking. I think we need to probe more seriously.
All right, let's change tack by looking at what News Direct reported. Actually interested in most of these you know, human angle stories. Copyright abuse. As a journalist, how do you receive this kind of news? Senate considers imprisonment, fine for Facebook, Twitter post violators. Go to Twitter. You say that Twitter is more than toxic than what it used to be. People are more expressive than Facebook. So how are you able? How would you do you think they'll be able to implement this kind of law, so to speak?
Yeah, it's a consideration. You see, and it's not coming for the first time. There was an attempt in the past. But I think this has to do with copyright issues. And, you know, it's something I will subscribe to. A lot of hard-working writers, creative persons are not allowed to, you know, reap from their sweats. They work hard, and before you know what is happening, somebody else releases their work using social media, and they are left with nothing after all the effort. So I think the National Assembly is trying to help people in this category safeguard their work the more. Since the advent of social media, copyright abuses have been on the rise, and a lot of people get away with practically anything. Since it has become very difficult to punish people who abuse copyright using social media. So I think if they would, you know, put the law together in a manner that it will be implementable, right, not the usual vague directives that we call law sometimes. Put it down in a way that both the offender and the agency that will punish understands what it is they are getting into when they decide to breach copyright rules, and when they decide to prosecute those who do. So if they're able to make it as clear as possible, it's going to be in the interest of creative persons. Yeah. I'll subscribe
I know Dr. Dan Ekere will want to talk about, you know, the issue of plagiarism and all that, but I want us to race against time by talking about the elephant in the room here, you know, reported on virtually all front pages of newspapers. Vanguard newspaper says PDP's open ticket presidential contest triggers uproar, and Governor Tom says we didn't throw tickets open, but zoning committee says why contest was thrown open.
it can be, there shouldn't be ambiguity about their position. If it is not open, there's zone. If you zone it, you should be very clear on that the presidential ticket has been zoned to so part of the country. They will know. But since you've not made such pronouncement, and people are speaking from both sides of the matter, clearly what it represents is that the ticket is thrown open. And now, the last dispensation, it was actually zoned to a part of the country. I think that's what is really, you know, orchestrating all these, you know, hula baloo about zoning and opening and what have you. Yeah. Otherwise, on a normal day, democracy is about a contest. The way it is practiced today is about a contest. I don't really believe in all this zoning ordinarily. But as long as the party has decided to start with that particular track, then conclude the race. Because in the last dispensation, you actually did zone this thing. to a particular aspect. The expectation this time around is that you are going to do the same so that there will be some level of, fairness, equity, justice. That is the least that is expected. But all the same, I think they're equally reading the times. They are looking at the terrain. They are trying to see what could favor the party in a way. But whether this will favor the party is another challenge, because sometimes you do all the estimations, readings, and all manner of things. At the end of the day, you just decided that you are just ring barreling, and you've only done it to hurt yourself. So in the case of this PDP presidential ticket of a thing, I have my worries whether it will not actually affect those southern states because automatically that's where they have their strength. To now have this kind of a challenge where they were expecting that at least they will have this opportunity of producing the next presidential candidate. So it's really worrisome. But I think it's still about democracy.
Right, that would Odufowokan. Daily Sun has the same thing, saying PDP under fire for dumping zoning. And Ohaneze said party has committed suicide.
You see, the Ohaneze is being hard on the PDP with that statement, because it's politics. And what's paramount in politics? Interest. The leaders of PDP sat down, looked at what would be in their interest, and they came up with this idea, controversial idea, of let's open the game. But can we conveniently say the zoning committee dumped the zoning when Otto, the chairman, came back to say, I've been misquoted? How he was misquoted is yet to explain. And in all this, his other statement, he didn't say, this is what we decided. He just said, I've been misquoted. How? Where? You see, I said it ab initio, that this zoning controversy will make or mar the PDP. Whichever way PDP goes, it will lose something. What probably they did is let's look at where we lose less. And because if they had zoned the ticket to the south, I tell you, this noise will be coming from the north. So it's a tight one for PDP, let me tell you. But it's sadder because their constitution prescribes zoning. So if they are dumping zoning today, it is just beyond noise. The INEC has explained when you should submit your presidential nominee, do your primaries and all that. I see a serious legal tangle. That's one area many people are not looking at. Because it is prescribed in the Constitution. I see a serious legal tangle after the primary should a southerner fail to pick the ticket. And with the constraints of time, I wonder how PDP is going to wriggle through this. If another emerges as the candidate and the southerners head to court, and knowing the Nigerian judiciary, today, High Court in Abakaliki says no. INEC will swiftly say no. Tomorrow, High Court in Ijesha, still of the same.
All right, because of our time.
I see drama ahead,
because of our time.
I can only pity PDP.
Yeah, in just 1 minute, I want you to quickly, respond to what Daily Independence reported.
Okay.
Presidential primaries, APC leaders won President Buhari against consensus candidacy. No aspirant should be imposed on contestants, as according to Sage. We saw former Governor Adele Fayose saying, if anyone asked me to, step down for anyone, I would never do that.
And that means there will be no consensus, because the idea of consensus is very clear. All aspirants. And for PDP is a tough one. You first tell people, go and obtain form. You see, when you have the attitude to merchandise and the attitude to do reconciliation, it doesn't usually go together. You ask people to go and obtain form. Now you are talking about consensus. You realize that constitutionally, for every one of them that picked the form, he or she becomes a stakeholder that must agree to your consensus. So it's safer. It's still safer for APC now that is yet to ask people to obtain form. Right. You discuss consensus first. So if they are able to, that's not imposition. Right. All right. But if they are unable to, then let's everybody go to the field.
Dr. Ekere, your final thought on this?
Yeah, I think this new trend in our political climate It's a development that, yeah, ordinarily should all go well for the system, but that is if they are able to manage it well. Because don't forget that politics are all about interest.
Absolutely.
And the interests sometimes are so deeply entrenched that to actually manage them is a huge challenge. I just hope and pray that they will be able to handle this, and then Nigeria will be the best for it.
There you go again, typical Nigerian, hope and pray. We continue to hope and pray. Thank you very kindly, gentlemen. In the studio with me have been journalist Dario Odufowokan and lecturer from the University of Lagos, Dan Ekere. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.